A human lived alone for decades to find his love, until an alien mother landed at his door. When Earth's climate collapsed, humanity scattered among the stars. Elias had been one of the engineers assigned to maintain outpost Adrastea, a self-sufficient dome on a half-terraformed moon called Vereen 4. It was supposed to host 200 settlers. They lasted 5 years. When the supply ship stopped coming and the communications network fell silent, the others left in search of help, or hope. Elias stayed behind. He said he'd wait for Lena, his partner, who'd left years earlier on a survey mission to another sector. Her last transmission had ended mid-sentence. Most believed she'd died when her shuttle vanished into deep space static. Elias refused to believe it. Decades later, the dome still stood, patched, weathered, and humming with recycled air. Elias had learned to speak the language of silence. Each morning, he checked the hydroponic bay, calibrated the atmospheric filters, and recorded a daily log no one would ever hear. He had grown old, hair white, skin burned by the reflected suns, but his eyes still searched the horizon at dusk. He had one ritual: at sunset, he would stand outside the dome and look toward the west, where the sky turned copper, whispering, "If you're out there, Lena, you'll find me." It was not hope. It was a habit. On the 42nd anniversary of his solitude, the sky tore open. A streak of light flared across the thin atmosphere, too controlled for a meteor, too erratic for a supply drone. It screamed overhead and vanished behind the ridge. Elias stared for a heartbeat before instinct took over. He grabbed his oxygen pack and climbed into the old rover, its engine coughing dust and protest. By the time he reached the crash site, the night had deepened. The wreckage smoldered in the dark, an oval craft, smaller than any human shuttle, marked with glyphs that shimmered faintly blue. Something moved inside. He raised his torch. A figure crawled from the twisted hatch, tall, slender, with pale opalescent skin and eyes like molten silver. She clutched a smaller shape against her chest, a child, limp but breathing. Elias lowered his weapon immediately. "Easy," he said, voice hoarse. "You're safe." The alien woman looked up. Her voice trembled, musical yet broken. "Help, little one hurt, please." He had seen hundreds of languages collapse into static on long-range transmissions, but desperation was universal. He extended his hand. They reached the dome by dawn. Inside, under the sterile glow of the medlights, he examined the child, its vitals weak, lungs struggling against the alien air. Using his ancient medical kit and a lifetime of improvisation, he adjusted the oxygen ratios and temperature. Hours later, the child stirred and whimpered softly. The alien mother, still unnamed, bowed her head in gratitude. "You saved my son," she whispered. "Name is Asha." "My child, Tyran." Elias smiled faintly. "Elias. Anne, you're welcome." Days passed. The wreck outside cooled into scrap, half buried by wind. Inside, the dome was alive again. Asha learned quickly how to use the filters, how to brew the nutrient mixture, how to speak in halting English. Her people, she explained, were the Kavran, nomads of the Outer Rim. Their colony ship had been destroyed by raiders, forcing her to flee in a small pod with her son. Elias listened quietly, fascinated by the rhythm of her words. He realized something that startled him: the silence had lifted. Tyran laughed often, high, echoing laughter that filled the metal corridors. The child followed Elias everywhere, touching machines, asking questions, leaving smudges on the glass. For the first time in 40 years, the dome felt like home again. At night, Elias sat by the viewport, gazing at the stars. Asha would sometimes join him, wrapping her four-fingered hands around a cup of heated water. "Why are you alone?" she asked one evening. "Waiting," he replied. "For who?" "Someone I loved." She went into the void. "I promised to wait." Asha tilted her head, her silver eyes soft. "Love strong," she said. But waiting forever, is it life? He didn't answer. The question lingered, heavier than the silence ever had been. Weeks turned into months. The hydroponic gardens bloomed again, and Elias found himself teaching Tyrion to read from old Earth books, stories of oceans and rain. One morning, while repairing an antenna tower beyond the ridge, his radio crackled to life for the first time in decades. Signal detected, outpost Adrastea, respond if anyone alive. Elias froze. The voice was faint, almost unreal. He answered, shouting into the static. This is Elias Brandt of Adrastea. I read you. After a long hiss, a reply. Elias, this is Search Vessel Renaissance. We found your partner's records. Lena Brandt survived. She's on the Eudora colony, Sector 6. His knees gave out. The wind howled around him, carrying away his breath. Lena. Alive. That night, he told Asha everything. She listened silently, her child asleep beside her. Then you go, she said softly. Find her. You wait so long. I can't just leave you, he replied. Your ship is beyond repair. You'd die out here. Asha shook her head. We survive. You, have a heart calling you. Must follow. Elias looked at the two of them, the alien mother and her child, framed by the soft green glow of the garden lights, and felt the weight of decades pressing down. He had waited for Lena all his life. But life had moved on without him. Maybe, he said, voice trembling, the person I was waiting for, isn't the same one waiting for me. At dawn, he loaded the shuttle with what supplies remained. The Renaissance would arrive in 2 days to pick up survivors. Asha and Tyrion stood by the hatch, wind tugging at their robes. When you find her, Asha said, tell her you lived. Tell her you grew things again. And you? Elias asked. We will make this place our home, she said simply. Because you taught us how. Tyrion ran forward and hugged his leg. Goodbye, Eli. He smiled. Goodbye, little star. The engines ignited. Through the viewport, he saw Asha raise her hand in farewell, her silhouette haloed by rising dust. As the shuttle lifted into the thin sky, Elias looked down on the dome shrinking below, its silver curve gleaming in sunlight. He imagined Asha and her son inside, tending the green rose, laughing, breathing life into the silence he had once feared. When the Renaissance finally hailed him, he almost didn't respond. The captain's voice was warm, professional, and human. Elias Brandt. You're a legend, sir. We'll take you home. Home. The word felt strange on his tongue. The Renaissance docked at Eudora Colony after 3 weeks in transit. The station was vast, shining, crowded with the sound of life, too much life after so many years of solitude. Lena was waiting at the docking bay. She had aged, as he had. Her hair was silver now, her eyes softer but still bright. When she saw him step through the airlock, she froze, then ran forward, tears streaking her face. They embraced without words. For a long moment, time folded in on itself, the decades between them vanished. But as they sat later in her quarters, sharing stories, he realized something had changed. Lena spoke of her new family, her grown children, and her students. She had built a life here. She had survived. She had moved on. He was happy for her, truly. But deep inside, a quiet understanding bloomed. The love he had waited for had become a memory, beautiful, untouchable. The living love he had found was back on a lonely moon, tending green leaves beneath alien skies. A year later, Elias returned to Vereen, for the authorities thought him mad to go back, but he knew what waited there. As his shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere, he saw the dome still standing, expanded now, surrounded by makeshift dwellings. Smoke curled from a vent, solar panels glittered in the sun. When he stepped onto the sand, a small figure came running. Tyran, he laughed, catching the boy, no, the young man, in his arms. Asha emerged from the entrance, her silver eyes wide. She looked exactly as he remembered, ageless, calm, radiant. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised I'd check the filters," he said with a grin. She laughed, a soft sound like wind over glass, and took his hand. Over the following seasons, the three of them built something new. Elias repaired the generators, Asha expanded the garden into open fields, and Tyran learned to read the stars, charting safe routes for passing traders. Humans and Kavran began to visit, drawn by the rumor of a small settlement where both species lived as one. They called it Haven. At night, Elias and Asha would sit beneath the transparent dome, watching the twin suns sink behind the dunes. "You found love," Asha said one evening, "just not where you looked." "Maybe love was never about finding," he replied. "Maybe it's about staying." She smiled. "Then stay." He did. Years later, travelers crossing Barrene, for often stopped at Haven for supplies. They would speak of an old human engineer and a silver-skinned woman who walked the fields together, their laughter echoing through the desert air. Some said the plants in that soil grew faster than anywhere else, fed by strange minerals or perhaps something deeper. When the wind rose at night, it carried a whisper through the dunes. "If you're out there, you'll find me." But those words no longer sounded like longing. They sounded like home.